Indigenous communities are disproportionately affected by wildfires and disproportionately affected by smoke.
Tonight, wildfire smoke is taking a toll on Indigenous communities.
Is a distraction from the worry and the point of it, which is that you're not in your home and you don't know really what the situation might be like when you do get back.
And how one CFL team is helping fire evacuees enjoy their stay in Edmonton. Good evening, Tanse Anine. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. While a wildfire burning near the city of Yellowknife is currently being held at bay thanks to firefighting efforts and a bit of good weather, officials say it's still not safe for residents to return. High temperatures, low moisture, and brisk to heavy winds on Friday are expected to put pressure on the eastern perimeter of the fire closest to Yellowknife. 2 new fires were sparked in the North Slave region, bringing the total number of fires in the region to 90. The next 48 hours will be crucial to prevent the fire from progressing. Very little precipitation is also expected over the next week. The Yellowknife fire was last mapped at over 170,000 hectares in size. As for those trying to get back into the city, officials say they may be faced with fines or possibly even jail time.
I know residents have been seeing, blue skies, sunny. It was hot yesterday, it's hot today, it's going to be hot tomorrow, but those are actually not great things for the fire.
To the wildfires in BC now, where some of the people who lost their homes in the Okanagan are firefighters serving on the front lines while dealing with deep personal loss.
They didn't just fold up and go cry because they lost everything they owned in the world. They continued to fight their neighbors' houses to try and save as much as possible.
Of the 25 on-call firefighters in the Wilson's Landing Fire Department, 13 are now homeless because of the fires. 2 members were also injured fighting the fires. Rain has provided some relief, allowing for the lifting of the last travel restrictions to West Kelowna. There is still no timeline, though, for when the remaining evacuees can go home. In BC's North Shuswap region, fire crews have been pulled out amid ongoing tensions.
The top priority of response at this point is safety, and that is safety of our people and everyone else in the area.
Tensions escalated into a confrontation when a group calling itself Truth and Freedom Convoy tried to break through a roadblock into an evacuation zone. The group left peacefully and no one was arrested. There are people in the region trying to support others who are fighting fires on their own. Another air quality advisory has been issued for BC's lower mainland as the region is hit with more wildfire smoke. The issue is for parts of Metro Vancouver as well as the central and eastern Fraser Valley. Officials say the poor air quality is specifically a concern for those with underlying health conditions. Sarah Henderson is the Scientific Director of Environmental Health Services at the BC Centre for Disease Control. She says Indigenous communities have fewer resources and are therefore more susceptible to the smoke and should take precautions to keep community members safe.
Indigenous communities are disproportionately affected by wildfires and disproportionately affected by smoke, and we absolutely need to make those trusting connections so that information can be passed between groups and so that experts are available to Indigenous communities to address questions that they may have.
As addictions continue to take lives across the Yukon, the territorial government is taking action by way of a new substance use health emergency strategy. The 60-page document provides 43 actions to guide the ongoing response to many substance use issues in the territory. Recommended actions include opening a sobering shelter and expanding options for live-in treatment. In January of 2022, Yukon government declared a substance use health emergency following a surge of addictions-related deaths. The overall goal of the strategy is to support the health and safety of all Yukoners and communities.
I hope All of our partners see themselves in this strategy. I hope our government partners, First Nations governments, communities see themselves in this strategy, see something that they can decide to do or think about or implement.
All right, we have to step aside for just a moment. We still have plenty more news to come. Stay with us. Welcome back to APTN National News. The Saskatoon Tribal Council is calling for more funding and partners to step up and provide another wellness center for the homeless in Saskatoon. At a community barbecue hosted by the Saskatchewan Indian Gaming Authority, Chief Mark Arcand lauded the community which supports homelessness in the region. STC's Emergency Wellness Center opened in the winter of 2021 with 50 beds and expanded to 106 beds last year. Arcand says as homelessness numbers rise, more beds are needed, especially for those with complex needs.
We need the proper staff in place to deal with medical people that are in psychosis. Like I said, we don't have that here. And at the end of the day, we need that proper investment to really make sure that we're helping people. Or where do they go? Where are they transported? And how do we support? If it's not here, where do they go? And I think we're lacking those facilities. I think we're lacking treatment facilities. I think we're lacking detox beds. When somebody wants to say, I'm done doing this stuff, what do? There's nowhere to take them. So we've got to address this in a real-time situation, because I'll be honest with people, winter's coming. And we know how mean winter is with Mother Nature, and it gets cold out here, and nobody should be living out on the street. And I think we've got to do a better job. We have organizations coming together. What does it look like all to come together to solve this? Not just the province. It's got to be many partners stepping up to do this.
The government of Saskatchewan says it is strengthening its commitment to meaningful consultation with First Nations and Métis communities. The province says the new policy, revised for the first time in 13 years, shows its dedication to building positive relationships. But chiefs in Saskatchewan are already rejecting the province's revised consultation policy. The duty to consult has been a huge issue for NDP MLA Betty Nippy-Albright, who is the critic for First Nations and Métis relations. I spoke with her earlier to talk about the policy. Betty, thank you for taking some time out of your day to speak with us today. What do you think of the proposed new policy framework? Does it do anything to address your concerns?
No, it doesn't. For starters, this is a policy that was, I guess, redrafted, tweaked, and it only consulted with 31% of First Nations people and 38% of the Métis locals. But the problem is that they're still doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So what we've heard over and over again from nations is that registered letters are not consultation. So the first start of their assessment tool is registered letters. That hasn't changed. Over and over again, we've heard about nations, First Nation Métis people talking about cumulative impacts. That has not been addressed. In fact, this government doubled down on saying that we will not address past cumulative impacts. We'll only look at those going forward. But in the past, those are the cumulative impacts to our traditional territories they haven't listened to that. So that's always been an issue with First Nation Métis people in Saskatchewan, the cumulative impacts, and this government has chosen not to look at that. The other thing that has been reinforced here in this new revised policy is we used to have access to leased lands to exercise our treaty rights, to hunt, fish, gather, pick medicines. And also the other thing that's consistent is that this policy is still government driven. It's not community driven. The government still says what treaty rights are going to be impacted, if any treaty rights are going to be impacted, and they all can decide, the government decides if the land is being used traditionally.
Well, Betty, I want to go back to the consultation aspect. The Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations in Saskatchewan rejects the government's claim there was broad consultation with First Nations in coming up with this new policy framework. So what's it going to take for you and the leaders of First Nations organizations to accept a new policy framework with the province of Saskatchewan?
Well, for starters, at the First Nation perspective, 31% of First Nations were consulted. So that's pretty low. So yes, I concur with APTN saying that this is not consultation. And consultation, when governments say they value relationships with First Nation Métis communities, and when they only do a phone call the day before they announce it, that shows their utter disrespect for the relationship.
Mm-hmm. And the changes come into effect in 2024. Here we are in August of 2023. Can anything be done before the new policy becomes law in Saskatchewan?
Well, there are First Nations that have filed lawsuits against the provincial government. The advocating that First Nations and Métis communities have done, including myself, around halting the sale of Crown lands. So that has been good. The thing here is the government has said they'll halt any sale of Crown lands and leases for 2 years. However, my question to the government is, they've already sent notices of leases and Crown lands that they're going to be selling in this fiscal year. My question to the government is, will they retract those upcoming sales and leases for this fiscal year?
Well, Betty, there's certainly plenty to think about when it comes to this, but we'll have to leave it there. We certainly appreciate your time, and I want to say miigwech to you for taking some time for us.
Yeah, miigwech for having me, and it's always a pleasure to chat with APTN. Thank you.
A new monument has been unveiled of the contributions made by First Nations people to the building of Manitoba. The monument will commemorate the 1817 Peguis-Selkirk Treaty, the first formal written agreement in Western Canada recognizing Indigenous land rights. It provided land allocation for Lord Selkirk settlers as a way to alleviate the concerns of fur traders. The monument will consist of a bronze statue of Chief Peguis standing on a stone base with 4 bronze medallions inscribed with the chief's totems that accompanied Chief Peguis. 5 stones surrounding it will also feature medallions symbolic of the treaty relationship.
I wanted to greet people and to stand, you know, like what I said earlier, we're in our ceremonies and we have our eagle fan, and if you hear the check beat of the drum in a powwow, for instance, or in ceremony, you'll raise your feathers or your fans or whatever it is, or your hands, and accept that check beat, bringing in that extra energy, that power of Creator. So to have Peguis, an image of Peguis doing that here, is to like ask a blessing on everyone that's here, and then to look over them. You know, a lot of decisions are made in the building, and we need our best people at their best.
The largest medical class in the history of the University of Manitoba has received their white coats and took the Physician's Pledge on Wednesday.
I respect the secrets that are confided in me, even after the patient has died.
The class of 2027 has 125 students. 10 of those are Indigenous, including 23-year-old Kiana Tate from Norway House Cree Nation in northern Manitoba. Her goal is to move back to Norway House and work as a family doctor at a new hospital set to open this fall. She says there's a need for Indigenous physicians in northern communities, and she wants to be an advocate for Indigenous patients who are often mistreated in the healthcare system.
A lot of intergenerational trauma and addiction and poverty, and not everyone has someone to look up to, which is why being a role model and entering medicine, especially someone from the north, is really special to me, and I'm very honored that I get to be here and that I got my white coat today.
It's time for us to step aside one final time here on the show. Photo of the day and weather are coming up. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. One of our regular contributors, Dave Menzies, sent us this photo of a beautiful pink and orange sunset just outside of Dauphin, Manitoba. Thanks so much for sharing that one, Dave. We want to see your photos. Be sure to email them to share@aptn.ca and you can be featured as our next photo of the day. All right, now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Beginning on the East Coast, 19 degrees in St. John's and 20 in Halifax. 20 degrees in Cartwright and 13 in Coujawak. 23 degrees and some showers in Quebec City and 23 in Montreal. 24 degrees in Toronto and 20 in North Bay. 19 degrees in Wawa and clear and 23 in Big Trout Lake. 22 degrees in Churchill and clear and 22 in God's Lake. 23 and sun in Barons River and 23 in Winnipeg. Clear and 28 degrees in Swift Current and 26 in North Battleford. Clear and 26 in Buffalo Narrows and 20 degrees in Uranium City. Continuing west, 25 in Clear and Peace River and 25 in Grand Prairie. 26 degrees in Edmonton and 26 in Calgary. Clear and 27 in Campbell River and 27 in Bella Coola. 19 degrees in Prince Rupert and 27 in Fort Nelson. 20 degrees in Dawson and 15 in Old Crow. 27 degrees in Wrigley and 18 in Norman Wells. 10 degrees in Fort McPherson and 12 in Colville Lake. 5 in Cambridge Bay and 9 in Baker Lake. 5 degrees in Arctic Bay and 9 degrees in Iqaluit. The CFL's Edmonton Elks are reaching out to people from the Northwest Territories who have been evacuated due to wildfires. They are offering free seats to this Sunday's game against the Ottawa Red Blacks for anyone from the Northwest Territories displaced because of the wildfires. The team is looking to break a 22-game home losing streak, the longest in professional sports history. The free tickets are available now and at the box office on game day with an evacuation wristband or an NWT driver's license.
That's what it's intended to be, is a distraction from the worry and the point of it, which is that you're not in your home and you don't know really what the situation might be like when you do get back. And so if you're here, any and all forms of distraction and or enjoyment, I would think would be welcome, and we hope that, I mean, we've had a pretty good response to this, so we hope that it's working, and I hope that people will come and that the weather will be great, and for a few hours anyway, take a little bit of the pressure off.
In the next part of the Jingle Dress series, we are back at the Kenora Lake of the Woods Museum as Elder Isabel White reflects on the importance of preserving the right to culture through dance.
This is a snuff cover, and and this is the most original. See how old it is, and this is more.
Isabel played a lead role in the exhibit organization, including having people make their own cones.
You know, when we were doing that exhibit, and my husband said he likes to see jingles over here because your heart is over here, he said. And, you know, it's a healing dress.
The Nokimiquaning jingle dress origin rose during the time of heightened colonial oppression of Indigenous culture and spirituality.
We did almost shy away or afraid. I remember being, afraid of them taking away the power or whatever. And because there was also Metewin ceremonies, and that one, I know that one for sure was lost for years. It's just finally coming back.
For many decades, powwows and dancing were banned under the Indian Act from 1876. Over time, from protests, including from Indigenous veterans, the federal government made amendments to the Indian Act, but it wasn't until 1951 that the ban on cultural ceremonies was removed.
Do you know whose dresses these are? Or?
Yeah, so these ones we don't. We don't have any backstory, unfortunately.
So how did they come to the museum?
So these ones, I'm not exactly sure. There were some that were in the collection, I don't think these three, but at least one in the collection of Frank Edwards. So he was an Indian agent here. So when he passed away in 1940, he left his collection to the library, and it's at the library for some time, and ended up at the museum in 1964. So there's at least one from that collection.
Oh, wow.
But other than that, we don't know. So we're stewards of them, but we'd like to learn more, and who knows what the future will hold.
I think this would be a beautiful opportunity to have multiple generations to learn about this person and the context of how, they've been impacted with communities and families and multiple generations, and it could be done in a good way through ceremony, through healing of the jingle dress.
Rhonda says that she was inspired to paint a jingle dress mural that was also featured in the Kenora Jingle Dress exhibit. She says she modeled it after a photo with her family members, including Maggie.
Especially in the conversation, truth or reconciliation, like why is dancing and preservation of culture important?
Mm-hmm. A lot of our language is so immersed in the ceremonies, the songs, and that was carried through those kinds of hardships that were happening, where things were limited and they weren't allowed to do so much.
Maggie White passed October 21st, 1992 at the age of 69. But the jingle dress lives on. With the rise of Indigenous regalia fashion, the jingles are constant reminders of family and community resistance and persistence to preserve the right to spiritual cultural healing, as seen in vocalizations or salsa clips.
And stay tuned for part 5 of Carly's Jingle Dress series, and that will be next week. All right, that is all we have for you on this final Friday edition of APTN National News in August. Our website, aptnnews.ca, has more Indigenous news for you. For all of us here, thank you so much for joining us. Miigwech, Gananaskamatin, and have a great night.